following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. Comfortably Zoned. Going to talk some ball in the zone tonight with George Case, David Hubler, and Hal Bock. Maybe Alan Blumkin will join us. Let's hope so. But let's start with George. What do you want to talk about tonight, my friend?
Well, thank you, Ralph. And I'm glad that David and Hal are back and we're able to talk a little bit about, the current state of affairs in sports, particularly with baseball. And I'm going to start this. And Hal, if you'll lead off, I'd really like to get your impressions of Major League Baseball through the All-Star break, which I think is next week. So if you can, and then I'm going to ask David his impressions as well. But Hal, if you would, and I'm glad to have you available to talk with us, because Hal is a retired AP sports writer, had written a wonderful column called Box Score, and is very much up to date on New York sports, in particular baseball and hockey, but we're going to talk tonight baseball. So Hal, if you would, just talk a little bit about the season to date, some of the things that you see that's going on, and what your impressions of Major League Baseball today.
Thanks very much, George, for the kind words. I appreciate it, and I'm happy to be back. My impressions of baseball. The great Bobby Jones, the golfing great, once was asked about Jack Nicklaus when Nicklaus was just breaking in. And Jones looked at the questioner and he said, "He plays a game with which I'm not familiar." Well, that kind of describes my view of baseball these days. This is a different kind of a game than the one I grew up with. I saw a play the other day. They had the shift on. This is a great invention of the analytic people. They play three guys on one side of the infield and one poor guy on the other side. So the batter, being a clever fellow, pushes a bunt down the third base line. Pushes it pretty hard. The ball keeps rolling while the poor guy who's playing shortstop, who is running like hell, keeps running after it. The ball rolls into left field, and the batter is on second base with a double on a bunt. And this is what happens when you mess with my game. The game was designed to have two guys on each side of the second base to play defense. They don't do that anymore. The other complaint that I have with modern baseball is they burn out the bullpens. I mean, burn out the bullpens. Starting pitchers are expected to go 6 innings if they can. If they only go 5, that's too bad, but we'll get by. Well, you can't get by. The relief pitchers are throwing every night. They're worn out. We had a case here the other day, here in New York. The Mets have a relief pitcher named Seth Lugo. He's probably their best reliever. Edwin Diaz is their closer, who is limited to 3 outs. He can only throw the 9th inning and get 3 outs, and we'll go home. And Lugo is kind of the setup man because the guy they hired to do that, Familia, is hurt, and he's on the disabled list, and he's been pretty bad when he wasn't on the DL. So as a result, Seth Lugo is the guy, and he comes in and he pitches 2 shutout innings the other night. Diaz comes in, pitches the 9th inning, the game is over. Lugo gets the next night off. The next night, after having 1 night off, they go right back to Lugo, and he doesn't have it. He doesn't have anything. And I'm sitting here in New York, they're playing the game in Chicago, and I can tell just watching the TV that he's throwing lollipops up there. And I'm thinking, well, why don't they bring in somebody else? Well, the other guys in the bullpen are all worn out anyway, So they let Lugo stay in, and sure enough, he gives up a 3-run home run in the 8th inning to Javier Baez, and the Mets lose. And the clubhouse is a little tense after the game, and that caused a blow-up between the manager and one of the writers. The writer had the nerve to say, "See you tomorrow, Mickey," and Callaway went slightly berserk. And then the writer was challenged by a pitcher, Vargas, who could take his act elsewhere as far as I'm concerned. And it was just an ugly scene. But all of this comes from wearing out the bullpen. And this is a this is a change in baseball, in the strategy about the way the game is played, which I don't agree with. I mean, somebody ought to call up Juan Marichal and talk to him about the game he pitched against Warren Spahn when they both threw 16 innings. And the game was ended when Willie Mays hit a home run. But nobody took those guys out. They threw, 200 pitches, I guess. So why is it, I asked the panel this, why is it today that we have a pitch count, limited pitch count to 100 pitches, and out you go? We have shifts on the infield that leave wide spaces for batters to use if they want to, if they choose to. I mean, I don't get it. I don't recognize this game as the game I fell in love with. So I'll leave that open to you guys to talk about.
Well, Hal, I'm going to jump in here because I happen to agree with you. And, I'm old school. Baseball to me, the appeal of the game was the way it used to be. I've been very much against pitch counts. I think it's carried to the extreme. 100 pitches. I mean, my God, 100 pitches can be nothing. I mean, if a guy's in the old days starting pitchers, you're talking about Marichal and Spahn. I mean, they're throwing over 200 pitches or 215 pitches, whatever it was. I mean, that's how they strengthen their arms, and that's what Nolan Ryan has maintained all along. That pitchers pitch, and you're going to get some sore arms. But my gosh, you got sore arms today. You got guys on the DL. And they've pitched, 4 or 5 innings, and it's a so-called quality start. Well, to me, the whole thing is just ridiculous. Now, David, I want to step in here with you too, because you're down there in D.C. What's going on with the Nationals? Are they facing with the same kind of a thing where you've got this crazy reliance on pitch counts and starting pitchers and all that? So.
In fact, the Nats blew another one last night, or Sunday, I guess it was. They were out ahead almost by about 8 runs, and they started with this bullpen nonsense. And Trevor Rosenthal came in, and he couldn't find home plate. He threw 12 straight balls, loaded the bases. The last pitch of the 12 was like sailing over the batter's head. Catching, I know it was Jan Gomes, had to jump up to catch the ball. He was so bad that they released him the next day. I mean, and they blew the lead and lost the game. And they were way out ahead at one point. And that reminds me of when you were talking about the Mets game. The whole thing is insane. The two games that I remember most this year, and they're sort of like highlights, high points of the season, was when Tanaka pitched a full complete game and Max Scherzer pitched a complete game. Now what when you talk about two guys, now granted I didn't follow every other team in both leagues, but to find just 2 complete games, and it was like these guys had pitched 16 innings each, the way it was written up. It's terrible. The same thing happened to the Yankees against Toronto last night. They started fooling around with the pitchers, and they lost. They wound up losing. I forget who it was. They demoted him too after the game. It's just crazy. The whole thing is, and you're right. Both of you're right. I mean, now it's even worse because they don't even have starters. They have openers. So right. A relief pitcher, which now no longer applies as the term, starts and pitches 2 innings, and then they mix and match the whole rest of the way. I don't buy it at all.
Well, I don't either, David. And Hal, I'm sure that with your comments, you don't either. I mean, it's just a different game today, and like I said, I'm old school. I like it the way it used to be when starting pitchers, they were paid to start and finish games. And if you ever went out on the mound to ask a Drysdale or Ryan or Gibson or Spahn or any of these guys, hey, you've done enough for today. Your pitch count is way over the limit. I'm taking you out. Well, that manager better find a way to get back to the dugout safely because the starting pitcher is not going to come out.
I saw Scherzer do that a couple of times.
Right.
As I forget, Davey Johnson or one of them, no, the current manager. He's walking, and you can see Scherzer goes, no. I mean, just big.
We had the same thing here in New York with Noah Syndergaard. Noah Syndergaard is probably the second best pitcher when everything's going well for him, but sometimes it isn't. Okay, he pitched, for example, a shutout, hit a home run, and the Mets won a game 1-0, 9-inning shutout. So that should certify you as you call your own shots. You're good enough to tell me when you want to come out.
Mm-hmm.
They go out there and they get him, and he was screaming at the manager. He didn't want to come out of the game. He came out of the game with a lead. They lost the game. Well, that's micromanaging, and I don't understand it. Why don't let the game play itself out,
Well, you know what, Hal and David, I can tell you for a fact, in the old days, and I say the old days, not that long ago, if a manager came out, what he's going to do, he's going to ask the pitcher, he's going to ask the catcher, how we doing? Does the pitcher still have the velocity? Does the catcher feel that the pitcher's hitting his spots, so on and so forth? If the answer is the affirmative, they stay in the ball game. They're not arbitrarily coming out because of their pitch count. They're coming out if in fact they're getting hit. That's fine. If they're not, the guy's going to want to stay in there and he's going to want to finish his job. That's his job as a starting pitcher. Now today, maybe I'm just old school and I don't know what's going on and that kind of stuff. But to me, it's crazy when a manager walks out there after 100 pitches and the guy's very effective, but he's hit a 100-pitch count. All of a sudden, you take him out of the game and you bring in these relievers, and then, like David has said, like Hal said, they wind up blowing the game.
Hey guys, the great Don Larson pitched a perfect game in the World Series. Right. He came in, pitched that game a day after he had been out all night drinking with some PR people. So he was a little under the weather when Casey Stengel gave him the ball for that World Series start. He threw 97 pitches, a perfect game. The only perfect game in World Series history.
Right.
I mean, the game, the wonderful part about baseball, one of the wonderful parts about baseball is it's so unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen. That's why you go to the ballpark, to watch the game and watch it evolve and watch it unfold.
Right.
They don't appreciate that part of the game. They think the analytics crowd thinks it can control the game with its formulas and its numbers and its launch angles and spin rates and all of this stuff. And it's all, for me, it's garbage, and I don't like it.
Yep.
And I have trouble with it.
And you see now that a lot of batters are now looking for that higher pitch because they want to get the launch angle correct.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah, how about you put a launch angle in, and you got a guy on first base, you move him over to second or third or whatever it is.
Well, that's old
forget about
George.
The damn launch angle. Hit the ball.
I know, of course.
You're so out of step, George. You're so out of step. You probably like to hit and run, also, right?
Absolutely.
Hey guys,
that's the thing that drives me. That's the thing that drives me crazy when I'm watching it. Only because, I grew up and I was, part of the game that I remember. Guys aren't up there to hit it into the seats. If you can't hit it into the seats, then you move the runner up. Now, they got guys with two strikes. They're not protecting the plate. All they want to do is hit one out.
Yep.
And to me, the strikeout thing is absolutely out of control. I don't know what the numbers are, but they're bizarre compared to what the strikeout rates and the strikeout numbers were, 50 years ago. Guys had pride. You had pride. Hey, you're not going to strike out. You choke up or you shorten your swing or you do whatever you can do to protect the plate when you got two strikes on you. Now, they're swinging just as hard on the third strike as they are on the first strike.
That's right. Was DiMaggio had when you had more home runs than strikeouts?
That's right.
It's insane. By today's
career, he had more home runs than strikeouts.
That's right, in his career, yeah.
Hey guys, I'd like to revisit something I know we've talked about before, and that has to do with the pitch count and the intensity of the different pitches. In other words, a guy throws 100 pitches, but how many of those pitches were thrown under circumstances where they just have to get the ball over, or they need to rear up and get the extra punch to strike a guy out? So pitch counts can be deceiving, I think, if you don't take into consideration how much of those were intense pitches. Does that make sense?
Well,
Sure.
Ralph, let me just step in here with me at least it does, because I used to pitch, but I know pitchers. I knew a lot of pitchers, and what they do, they pace themselves. Hey, if you need to pitch a 9-inning game, you're being paid to pitch a 9-inning game. You don't have to bear down every damn pitch. I mean, you move the ball around, you have the location, you rely on change-ups or curveballs or sliders or whatever it is. But on the other hand, you learn how to pitch. And to me, I can say, hey, whether guys are pitching, I see it on the camera, say, oh, that's a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. Well, gee, Bob Feller threw 98-mile-an-hour fastballs. Nolan Ryan threw 98-mile. They didn't throw it every pitch, but you change speeds. That's how you learn to pitch, and you're pitching to a batter's weakness. If a guy has trouble on a curveball, or he has trouble on a ball that's high and tight, that's how you pitch him. It used to be, and I'm not sure today, I don't really know because I'm not in the clubhouse, but it used to be that a pitcher and a catcher would sit down before a ball game in the clubhouse. They'd go every batter, and they know exactly how they wanted to pitch to that batter. Now, hitters, they do well if a pitcher makes a mistake. Pitchers are human beings. I mean, if a guy says, "Hey, man, I'm a great low ball hitter," well, you try to keep the ball up and maybe in. But on the other hand, the pitcher might make a mistake, throw one down on the knees, and the guy's going to, hit one. But that's part of the game. It's how the batters, react to the pitchers, and how the pitchers have knowledge and the catchers have knowledge of each hitter. That's the way the game used to be played.
Cardinals have a reliever, and I don't know his name. I forget his name. And he's a one-trick pony. He throws fastballs, 105 miles an hour.
Right.
He's now on the disabled list and out for the season because he threw out his arm.
Right.
Well, I mean, you can't, what George just said is quite true. The art of pitching is deception, too. And it's not just overpowering. It's when do I throw the curveball? When do I throw the changeup? When do I overpower you with a fastball? What count? That's part of the science of the game.
Or I know he's expecting a fastball, so I'm going to come in with a slider.
Of course. And last time up, I gave him 3 fastballs. This time he's getting 3 changeups.
Right.
That sort of thing.
Right.
And that's
exactly
to me.
Hal,
that's
exactly
part
right.
of the beauty of the game.
It is the beauty of the game, and it is what baseball used to be. And the fact is that I can tell you, Bob Feller, who was probably one of the fastest pitchers of all time, and my dad and Feller were teammates, but my father also hit against Feller, and he used to tell me, he'd say, it wasn't Feller's fastball, it was his curveball. He'd set you up with his fastball by throwing you the curve, or throw the curve and then throw the fastball. I mean, that's part of the art of pitching. And today, to me at least, when I see the cameras and the radar guns and all that kind of stuff, hey, it's wonderful. But that's not what pitching is all about. You can overpower a guy from time to time, but on the other hand, if that guy gets ready and he can hit your fastball and you keep trying to feed him fastballs, at one time he's going to hit you out.
Well, most major league players get to the major leagues because of their ability to hit the fastball, which is why I'm throwing the curveball.
Right.
Show me that you can hit my curveball,
Yep. That's it.
Right. Okay.
Well, I happen to agree with all the comments that's going on. It's just it bothers me. I mean, I think the ball players today are talented. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster, and that kind of stuff. But I still maintain fundamentally they're lacking, and they're lacking in a lot of areas. And one, to me, where you're lacking is that if you're trying to overpower, guys every time, you're just not going to do it as a pitcher.
Okay. Guys, one more thing, and Hal will definitely see what I'm talking about with the Mets and Diaz. He's a one-inning, three-pitch guy, that kind of thing.
3 outs, yeah.
So there were at least 6 games earlier in the season when he should have been called on in the 7th inning. I don't care. These roles are horrible. The game is on the line in the 7th inning, and they're bringing Gazelman in.
Here you go.
It never gets to the 9th inning, and my feeling is, both with starters and relievers, these got-to-know-your-role thing is really getting carried away.
It's
You remember when
baseball. It's being played by like a mathematics formula. Well, you can't do that. The game isn't designed to be played that way. You play the game as it develops, as it evolves. That's the beauty of the game. I don't know what's going to happen next. So let's see how it plays out. But instead,
and by so doing, if you leave yourself open, you can get the best matchups. You can bring the pitcher in that's apt to get that hitter out and quelch a rally rather
you know
than...
who did that? You know who did that? Terry Francona manages the Cleveland Indians, and they made a trade with the Yankees a couple of years ago. They got Andrew Miller. Andrew Miller is a pretty good relief pitcher, and the Yankees were using him as a closer, and he was dynamite. And Terry Francona said, oh, yeah? In the World Series, he was bringing Miller in the 6th inning. And people were yelling, oh, how could you do that? You can't do that. Well, they almost won the World Series doing that because he was managing outside the box, and that's how you have to play the game. You play it as it develops. You don't play it by formula. That's my opinion.
Yep, I agree with you, Hal. Absolutely. Let me ask you guys this too. We're talking, baseball and pitching, but I want to go to a little different subject. What about the way the game is played today fundamentally? What do you see? I personally am against the DH. I mean, I'm an old guy, so the DH I don't like. But the fact is that I've said all along, if a pitcher is going to hit, he should be able to bunt, or should be able to move the runners over, or should be able to hit, and some of them are good hitters. But today, if you have a DH like you do in the American League, you take the bat out of those pitchers' hands. And I am very much opposed to a lot of times I see guys, they're up there trying to bunt. They don't really practice. I don't think they play pepper anymore. I see them dipping the bat. I see them doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
Well, it's dangerous.
Yeah,
what happened to Max Scherzer.
It was just the other day. What's his name? I saw that, David.
Max Scherzer.
Yeah, I mean, he's up there, doing whatever he's trying to do.
No, he was practicing bunting. No, he was practicing bunting.
Yeah, he dips the bat and puts the ball right in his nose.
Yeah, and he pitched the next day, and he pitched well, too, by the way.
Well, to me, I think it's great that he pitched well, but I mean, I just
he's an old school. He's an old school.
Yeah, I mean, if you know how to bunt, at least you.
No, he can hit too. He can hit.
And the old rule used to be, hey, you let the ball meet the bat. You don't go dipping, and you don't do going after the bat. That's not. After the ball. That's not how you bunt. And guys have to know how to bunt. And yet today, because of the long ball, and because that's the way they play the game, very few guys know how to bunt. And if you have a chance to move runners up, instead of doing it the way the game used to be, they're still going to try to hit one out, and they might not wind up, they'll striking out, and they don't move it. They don't move anybody up.
You want to talk fundamentals, right? Okay, let's talk fundamentals.
Yep.
The Mets have a pitcher named Steven Matz, who's an enigma, like many of their pitchers. And he's pitching yesterday. He pitched last night's game for a while till they got him out of there. And he comes to bat. Now, he's not a bad hitter. He's a pretty good hitter. He comes to bat with runners at first and second and nobody out in the 3rd inning or thereabouts. And everybody in the ballpark knows he's going to bunt, or he should be bunting, right?
Right.
And he squares around to bunt, and he pops the ball up. Well, if you hold the bat properly, just catch the pitch on the bat, it's going to go on the ground. But he popped it up. Okay. His next at-bat, he gets a hit. He's on first base. He's a pretty good runner. He's on first base, nobody out. The next batter gets a hit. he's running to third base, and Bryce Harper cuts him down. Baseball adage is you don't make the first out or the last out of an inning at third base.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, where were you going, pal? You know? I mean, and that's when you're talking fundamentals.
Yep.
He was a classic example of a lack of fundamentals, not once but twice in the same game.
I'm with you there, Hal. It used to be that's what you would say. You say, hey, don't take yourself out of the game, and that's what you're doing there. I mean, that's just crazy to me. I mean, you know, if you're on second base, you're in scoring position.
Right, exactly.
Third.
Especially with none out.
You know, again, that's old school baseball. That's small ball. You know, the way it is today, it's long ball, and you know, all the people like to see the ball hit into the stands. But on the other hand, as we said earlier, I mean, the strikeouts are just crazy. Now, let me bring up another subject, and you guys tell me. I mean, I'm all for the players if they can make that kind of money, but you know, is Bryce Harper? Is he a $330 million player with his production? Is Mike Trout a $400 million player? Is you know, these guys $300 million? I mean, are these guys being paid on what they've done or what they're going to be doing? I mean, if you're going to be paying a Bryce Harper $330 million, you're paying him that for the next 13 years.
That's right.
I have a difficult time.
Mediocrity that gets you. It's not the superstars that are making the money.
No.
That should bother you.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that, Ralph. Right.
Pardon me?
You got guys who are playing. You know, we talked to before. You know, you got a rookie coming up who's totally unproven. He never played in any of a ball game. He's making $500,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be that guys were paid on their performance and what the performance of the previous year. I mean, now, you know, the agents, and if I was playing and my agent was able to negotiate a 10 or 12 or 15-year contract, God bless him. But, you know, in the old days, that used to be you're paying, you know, a Mickey Mantle, a Stan Musial, a Ted Williams, and whatever. You're paying those guys based upon their performance the year before. You're not giving them long.
Hal, would you rather have an owner that goes out and takes a chance and pays Bryce Harper that kind of bucks, or an owner like Wilpon who doesn't roll the dice at all?
I'd like to see them occasionally roll the dice, but of course they rolled the dice with Yoenis Cespedes, and I don't know if we'll ever see him play again in a Mets uniform.
Right.
And he's got
but
signed $128
you know that rolling the
contract.
dice got him to the World Series.
1 year he did.
Yeah.
But
so
is that
looking
worth
back,
$128 million re-signing? I don't know.
The way it turns out with the injuries, but you really can't predict who's going to get hurt.
You can't. Once again, it's unpredictable.
Right. Right. But,
well, that's one of the reasons why I'm against these long-term contracts, because you don't know if you're an athlete and you're playing a sport. Hey, you're great if you're healthy, but if you're not, you know, you're going to be on the DL or whatever, and you're still collecting your money. And the club is not being, you know, they're not being reimbursed from your talent. They're being, you know, the fact is that you're paying all these guys that huge amount of money. And if they're on the DL or can't contribute to the team, that's tough, because that's a lot of big bucks.
Well, and, the Mets' cornerstone trade of the offseason was when they went out and got Edwin Diaz, the relief pitcher. And in order to get Diaz from Seattle, they had to agree to take Robinson Cano and his very inflated contract at the age of 36.
Right.
Now, he's a second baseman playing second base at age 36. I don't know. That doesn't make sense to me, but they went out and did it, and he's been a huge disappointment. He's been on disabled list a couple of times.
The guy's a Jake, too. He doesn't run stuff out.
Too. He's got that reputation. You're right. And I couldn't believe it when they made that deal. I said, what do they want with this guy? And a good friend of mine is a broadcaster for the Seattle Mariners, and he said, Don't kid yourself. He can still play. Well, yeah, maybe he can when he wants to, but he has to want to play. And sometimes I think it's a little too much for him to get out there and hustle and run to first base. I mean, it's embarrassing when you see a guy, as you said, shake it.
Yeah.
I think the biggest mistake he ever made was to leave the Yankees. No, seriously, not because I'm a Yankees fan, but because his play went downhill from then on.
He made a huge amount of money, and he's making a huge amount of
money.
Right.
This was a guy who everyone said, one of these years he's going to win the batting crown. He's got such a great swing, and he's just made to be a major league leader in hits, and it never happened. It never happened.
But, you can't measure a guy's intensity and what money will do to you to change you. Here you are, you've got all the money you'll ever need. What motivates you? Well, pride, you say, but...
Yeah, it should be.
It should be, but it isn't because for one reason or another, people tend to fall back on their laurels. And
I can't help but think. I think of the old day when Yogi Berra first came up, and the Yankees were really down on him because they felt that he was not really smart enough to be a catcher and not good enough, and that was going to cut into their World Series pay that they were making just about every year. And it took Berra, a little while to prove himself. But the point was that they didn't just welcome him as a new guy. They were really suspicious of him. They didn't want to lose any of that money.
Right.
Right.
Well, that worked out for them, though.
Yep. What?
There was a story.
Well, yeah,
about...
a guy like Berra. I mean, Yogi, obviously had a fantastic career, but there is another example though, because Yogi, when he was in his prime and was catching, as he got older, they moved him to left field. That's right. Part of what the game is all about too. I mean, you learn. You're talking about Cano. I mean, my God, at 26, he's a totally different player than he is at 35. And so, I'm with you, Hal. I mean, as a second baseman, 35 years of age, he's not going to have the range or the quickness that he had when he was 26.
Sure.
Of course.
Well, when he is healthy, he does show good range. It isn't that, like I say, it's not running stuff out. Once you get the fans
well, Machado has the same reputation.
Yeah.
If he doesn't feel like running down to first base, he's not going to run down to first base.
Well, he said it. He announced that.
Yeah, he did say it. That's right. Yeah.
But
no, I know it's no
secret.
secret.
The World Series, for crying out loud, he didn't want to hustle in a World Series. So that'll give you some idea. Yet people gave him the big bucks after that too.
Yeah, they did.
Well, sometimes
these
guys tell you what they are, and you don't want to listen to them. Like the owner of Philadelphia really fell in love with him. And you mentioned, George, should he have gotten the money? I say he should get whatever they offer him. Don't blame the player.
Hey,
you're right.
Absolutely, Ralph. I don't blame the player at all. I mean, if I were playing, I'd say, "Hey, where do I sign?" And David,
right.
You're down there in Washington. I'm sure that the Nationals weren't excited about seeing him go. But on the other hand, he's sitting in the catbird seat. And he says, "Hey, if they want to pay me that kind of money, that's fine. I'm gonna take whatever the market."
Yeah, you're right, of course, and he's right to do that. But I got to tell you, I really have a feeling watching the Nationals now that they lost their heart. Now, there's been a lot of problems, or at least perceived problems, with him. He's not a great team player. He's not this, that, the other thing. But they haven't played well since he left.
Right.
I mean, there's no heart there. I mean, he used to come up to bat. Harper would come up and he'd do that thing where the bat hits all four corners of the five corners of home plate, and he was ready to hit. He does the same thing in Philly, but it doesn't seem to have the same effect. And certainly the Nats have not been the same team since he left.
Well, David, I only look at the standings, and I see some stuff on Facebook. I think Washington has been a disappointment.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And the bigger disappointment, though, is Philadelphia. The Phillies.
Only lately.
Right.
They were in first place for a while,
Yeah, well, they've lost like 9 out of the last 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
So, But that's part of baseball. I mean, I've told people all that. I said, hey, there are streaks. You're going to get
gonna
get good streaks. You're going to get bad streaks. And the worst thing to do is come up at the end of the season like the Phillies did many years ago, and with a 10-game lead and blow it in September. I mean, you got to be able to go through the storm, and you're going to have you're just like a hitter. I mean, all these guys that are hitting, you see them hitting 300, 400, whatever it is, they're going to run into a streak where they're not going to hit anything. And then you're hoping that they're going to come back and continue to do well. That's just part of the game. And the same thing with with teams. The guys run away and hide in a ball club, the first month of the season, and then they fall flat. And if they come back and after the All-Star break, that's fine. But, you got to get hot in September. If you're in contention, that's when you want to put your ball games together in September.
No question, but you got to set yourself up for it. And
absolutely,
the Phillies that you mentioned in '64, Mark kept going to short. And who was it? That Bunning was the other pitcher. But he went to 2 guys down the stretch, and he just burnt them out.
No, he went back to the well too often. Absolutely. Right.
Exactly. And I think that's what Callaway did with Lugo the other night. I think it just got to the point. Lugo is the kind of guy can't pitch every night.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Right.
You're absolutely right. But they have a tendency, because the rest of those relievers are so awful, that they have a tendency to stick with him even through thick and thin. Lugo even said it after the game. He said, I had nothing. And you could see he had nothing. And he proved that he had nothing. But, they're very stubborn. They're thick-headed sometimes.
I have one other question for you guys. Since the shift, what is it, about 4 years now, 3 years, have the numbers of runs scored in a game gone down or gone up? Isn't the bottom line to keep runs from being scored? So whatever that shift is doing, and this is a question, I don't know. Is it working from that standpoint? If the shift is effective, you would think that less runs would be scored, and there would, because there's so much of a well to draw from getting statistics. You would think that somebody would have come up with that. Or is it working?
I'm sure there is a statistic. I haven't seen it, but I bet
I don't know the answer
they keep
to that
track
question.
of everything.
I don't know the answer to that question, but I will tell you this. The Independent League, the Atlantic League, we have a team called the Long Island Ducks in that league, adopted a rule this season outlawing the shift. You must play 2 guys on each side of second base.
Oh,
now,
wow.
That's something very, very dramatic, because Major League Baseball is doing it a different way. Now, did MLB suggest that change to the Atlantic League? I don't know. I'm not privy to that information. But they are playing as what George calls old-time baseball, old-school baseball. No shifts. So that's an interesting development, I think.
Right.
Well, how far does that shift go? Is it only the infield? Or is there a measurement for the 3 outfielders?
No,
How far over can the center fielder go?
I think only the infielders.
I think it's a novel idea. The problem I find is that it takes a defensive tool away from the manager.
That's the whole point. No. But they are convinced that because everybody's trying to hit a home run, everybody's going to pull the ball, and if they pull the ball, let's have 3 guys on one side.
I understand.
Right.
But, common sense, if I'm at the plate, I don't care if I'm a 50 home run hitter. If I'm at the plate and they're giving me the whole left side of the infield, if I'm a left-handed hitter, if they're giving me the whole left side of the infield, I'm going to slap the ball that way and hope that it gets by that one poor guy who's playing over there. And I've got to hit.
Yeah, you got to know how to do that, though. That's
right. That's the thing.
Look at Teixeira. Teixeira had. He never went to left field.
Inexcusable.
And it was inexcusable.
Player, you ought to be able to do that.
Right. He never did it. He pulled the ball every single time.
You know when they'll learn to do that when management starts rewarding them at the pay table, at the pay window for doing stuff like. Yeah, how many runners did you get over? Whoa, here's a raise to give you an extra 100,000. That sort of thing.
That's not a bad idea. I don't think the union would go for it, or maybe it would. I don't know.
No,
but you're right. I mean, it's an incentive. What
do
pay.
Today's fans want to see? Do they really want to see the home run at the expense of the game itself? And if so, we old timers are going through some. We're going to have some time in the future, but we're old timers. 82-year-old Phil Reagan, the Vulture, becomes. I think that's terrific.
What did he do? I didn't hear this.
He's Mets named Phil Reagan the new pitching coach. He's 82 years old, which means he's older than me, and I'm very old.
You're not very old on this guy.
Well, he's got lots of experience, that's for sure.
That's true. That's true. He does.
Okay, so that's a good idea that you could still stay in the game.
I didn't hear that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was enthused by that as a Met fan.
I wanted to bring up something I just saw on the internet not too long ago, and it's not baseball, but to me it's just crazy. They now have some sort of a startup company that's going to do videos of high school kids playing basketball or baseball or whatever to get colleges in tune to recruit them. And one of the videos, and this was some father or whatever made of his son, entitled it, "The Best Fifth Grader in Baseball." Fifth grade. Fifth grade. And they say, well, this is the wave of the future because the attention span, because, guys like us are talking about the way the game used to be, but the way sports are and the way kids are today, their attention span is about 30 seconds. So they do these YouTubes and they do all kinds of stuff, Instagram and whatever, and this is playing up to the younger kids coming up, that you're no longer sitting in front of a TV or going to a ball game and watching a game that's 9 innings long or 3 hours long or whatever it is. Now they want to put it out there so the kids can see themselves on TV or in YouTube in a 30-second clip as the best fifth grader in baseball.
Okay. Hey, we're old timers. We want the game to be like it was. But let me go around the horn here a little bit. Let's talk about the incredible defensive skills in today's game. What impressed you so far this season? Who individually or as a team impressed you defensively, David Hubler?
Anthony Rendon. And it's a crime that he was not one of the three selected for the All-Star game at third base. It's a crime. The guy's hitting over 320, 325, somewhere in that. And he has a gun of an arm. I've seen that. They should clock his throws from third to first. Incredible. And he's a great defensive ball player. He's not loud. He's not brash. He doesn't, go in for doing lots of interviews. He's a quiet sort of guy, but boy, when he gets out on that field, he's the one who really has taken over Bryce Harper's spot as the go-to bat on that club. And I was astonished when they named the three competitors for each position in the National League, and he wasn't one of the three at third base. I'm sure whoever wins, I'm sure the manager, let's say who'd be the Dodgers fan would select him for the team.
Great answer, Hal Bock. I'm going to ask you the same question.
You know, there have been a ton of outstanding defensive plays that I've seen on highlight shows all season long. Very, very impressive. But the Mets have a guy who is close to the leading hitter in the league, a rookie named Jeff McNeil. And he's a second baseman. But, of course, we got Robinson Cano. They had to find other positions for him. He's played left field. He's played third base. He's played right field. And he's been flawless in the field. And he's got a terrific arm. And without him, the Mets would be probably in fourth place, which is where they are. So he's been a breath of fresh air on a team that really is brutal sometimes, I'll tell you. And
to say nothing of his hitting. This guy's hitting about 330.
He's hitting around 340. He's near the league leaders in hitting. So he's been a terrific addition to that team. Plus the first baseman, Pete Alonso, has 27 home runs. He's got the Mets rookie home run record. He broke Darryl Strawberry's record the other night.
And never has there a guy who's shown marked improvement at first base as much as Alonso has.
Yes, that's right.
That's right. Even from spring training, let alone last year.
So it makes you wonder, those two guys, and you have the right fielder's name is Michael Conforto, and he's played very well this year. So it makes you wonder if they've got three guys who are really not bad players, how come they're such a bad team?
Well, because Rosario has turned out to be horrible at shortstop. Lagares doesn't hit in center, and without him in center, they're much weaker than when those other guys out there.
Yep.
And Wilson Ramos hasn't really been the Wilson Ramos we wanted. In answer to your question, why do they suck? And boy, do they ever. So
Wilson Ramos was a real star with the Nationals, boy.
And
he was
with
terrific.
Tampa as well.
Yeah.
He comes to the Mets and he fizzes out. Go figure. Anyway, guys, this has been terrific. Let's do it again next week.
Okay.
Look forward to it.
All right, George, have a great vacation.
Yes, George. I forgot to ask George. Your defensive.
You know what? I just want to put my 2 cents in as far as the skill level. I mean, to me, the skill level today of today's players, some of them are phenomenal. I mean, I don't follow the game nearly the way I used to, but to see some of the infield play and what you guys are talking about and the outfield play, I mean, the athletes are bigger, faster, stronger. They can do things that in the old days the ball players just couldn't do. I mean, today they can. The nutrition is better, the training is much better, and they're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster, and they can do things. And that's what I really admire watching guys at the skill level, not the fundamental level, but the skill level to me is just, it's wonderful in baseball. And not only baseball, basketball, football, whatever, you know, we didn't even get into the basketball thing with Zion Williamson. I mean, to me, you know, he's got the potential to be the next superstar in the NBA because he's got the tremendous skill and, size and quickness, and that's the way the game is today.
Yeah, if only these great athletes, that are playing the game today would play the game the way it used to be played, then we'd really have a spectacle.
We would. I agree with you there, David.
You get the
best of both worlds. Right.
That's it. All right, guys.
Like
good talking to you.
Next week, and George, lead us again. We get an update next week about the shoe scandal. What happened? What's the offshoot of there? How is this changing NCAA basketball?
Okay, we'll talk about it when I get back in 2 weeks. We'll discuss that. So
in 2 weeks, absolutely.
Yep.
And David or Hal will lead us next week I forgot who I designated, but
you designated me, but I'm willing to let Hal take it if he's got a good idea.
Well, if I designated you, if I took took you out of the rotation, you wouldn't know what your role was,
right?
And it would screw everything up. You know. All right, guys. This has been fun.
I'm glad we're back together again. That's
me
terrific.
too.
Yes,
me too.
First time in a while. Next week we'll have Al Blumkin join us, hopefully recovering from the DL. It's the IL.
IL now.
IL now, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Be healthy. Thanks for listening, everybody. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tyko, the weak link of it all.